Today's valuable brainstorm will feature Tim Kraft. We are going to be talking about life, liberty, and pursuit of property, hearing stories about his journey along the way. Buckle up, it's been a wild one. Without further ado, Tim from the Great Lakes of Minnesota. How are we doing today? What the heck is EOS? We're going to start at the very end of your journey, to throw a curveball for the audience. How do you use EOS today as a fractional integrator?
Hey, Ross, thanks for having me. Yeah, all our snow is gone in Minnesota, so this is a great time. EOS for me and my clients is a really cool way to organize and structure what they have going, hopefully with the growth in their business, so that everybody from the top all the way through the organization understands what's happening, why, what's most important, and how we're going to get there, and what it looks like at the end.
So you've got plenty of experience. I talked to several other people that are either fractional integrators or whatnot, and some of them have been management, or some of them have worked in the C-suite, COO. But you've owned several businesses.
Yeah. For about 40 years, I've owned several businesses. We were talking before about I went to school for music and a little bit of business, but was in automotive aftermarket repair and then food manufacturing. So that combined with music and then device, med device world after that. People look at me and go, "What are you doing? How does that all come together?"
Yeah. What? Let me ask you. So when you went to school for music, so when you're growing up and you're picking your major before going to college, what was it about music and business? Because that's kind of people don't think about it as like a normal, like some people do like theater and music, or they'll do music and maybe education, but business and music. How did you land on that decision going to school?
Yeah, so I've learned a long time ago that I'm fairly left-right brain balanced, and creativity exists in both sides. But of course, everybody thinks of the right for one and the left for another. But being creative in business is very important, especially if you're in a leadership role or you're owning your own business. Creativity in music, of course, that's what music is. And so I found a lot of synergy. I still am a musician. I've always been a musician. I perform in several groups. I get paid professionally to do it, and I continue to grow. So I think both affect each other and help one another.
Wait, you're still a paid musician? Like you've been a paid musician through the 40-year career of owning businesses?
Yep. People can look up Free and Easy Band, freeandeasy.com. It's a Midwest Music Hall of Fame band.
Midwest music?
Yeah,
So
Midwest Music Hall of
what
Fame.
what do you like? Do you sing, play? What instrument?
I'm a woodwind player, so all the saxes, flute, I do sing, but mostly saxes and flute. And I also play in a 75-piece community band, which is one among the top in the country. So I have a lot of diversity in music performance too. Mm-hmm.
What?
Yeah.
First of all, I'm kind of shocked because one, I know people that are professional members of like orchestras, or they play, they play professional music, and that's what they do, right? Like,
Yeah.
that's a whole thing. That's a time-consuming thing. But then to own businesses at the same time, I mean, how did you do both?
You have to have a lot of patience with yourself, a lot of organizational skills, and a lot of commitment. Again, I believe that the music was a good stress relief over the years
Mm.
for me. That and martial arts. I'm a second degree black belt in Taekwondo, and I think using the physical part, the creative mental part, made me a better business owner and be more effective with fewer hours. So instead of putting in 80, 90-hour weeks, I was able to put in 50, 60-hour weeks and be very effective.
I can speak to the martial arts with. I have a background since 7 years old. Started Tang Soo Do, then wrestling, and then later on Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and Dutch kickboxing, and finally I did a few cage fights before I realized that
Oh,
that
great.
the like it was. I'm glad I checked it off the bucket list, right?
Yeah.
But I would not be able to have a 40-year professional career in that like you do with music. So
No, no.
gotta pick the battles wisely with trying to make money.
I
But I
was in
would.
jiu-jitsu for a little bit, and I found out that that did not mix well with music because I got my jaw dislocated twice, and that doesn't work well when you're trying to put a saxophone mouthpiece in your mouth. So, yeah, I got out of competitive jiu-jitsu and actually out of competitive karate for a while because of that.
Uh, the jaw injury or singing, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
But I broke a hand once, and I remember going to the office the day later and just trying to type. I was going back to hunting and pecking with my fingers like this because I couldn't use any of these three fingers.
Yeah.
But to your point about managing time and stress and energy levels, I think that's an often overlooked thing, especially for people that might be just getting into business. They think they have to spend 100 hours a week and everything they have to do revolves around it. But to your point, if you want to be in it for the long haul and actually achieve success, you gotta have a somewhat of a balance to make sure that you, the most important asset of your journey, is well taken care of. Um, was there ever a time you had to learn that lesson the hard way, or were you pretty balanced from the jump?
I'd love to tell you everything was perfect. No, I did learn the hard way. I had three automotive repair franchises, and I was trying to run one myself and manage the other two remotely. They were all in the Twin Cities, but they were 20 to 30 miles apart. And I remember one day looking at my computer screen, it was just all getting fuzzy, and I started to lose my peripheral vision. And I realized something was going on, but I had to get to my other store. So I did foolishly get in my car and drove and got to the other store. Don't remember the trip. But when I got there, my head was pounding. I couldn't do anything. They called an ambulance. Long story short, I had a potential nervous breakdown. So, going through that experience and having to spend a night in a mental ward of a hospital so they could see if I was going crazy or had some tumor in my head, which none of those applied. It was just an anxiety panic attack. But I learned from that what the warning signs were and when to let myself relax. Nothing was worth going through all that. My family needed me, my businesses needed me. And so it changed my perspective of how I was going to spend time and how much I was going to push myself every day.
As much as it was probably incredibly emotionally hard at the time, oftentimes I find that you don't know when the limit is until you go past it. So it may have been fortunate that that happened because then you had proceeded decades afterwards of, you know, learning the lessons of balance.
Yeah,
So
thankfully
what?
that happened in my 20s, so I got a lot of benefit many decades out of that experience.
Yeah, yeah. I look back and realize now that I'm in a different decade than my 20s. I'm a little bit older. I'm glad a lot of the injuries and a lot of painful lessons happened then when I had a bit more. What's the word? The recovery was faster. How's
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Resilience, yep.
Yeah.
Your body adapts quicker, yep.
So okay, what was your first? Was it the automotive thing? Your first business that you did?
Yes, it was.
And you said it was a franchise business. Did you just graduate college and say, "This is wild. Let's try this"? How did the decision making process go for that?
Well, interesting story there. I'll try and be brief, but I was working for a company called Montgomery Ward out of college. I don't know how many people remember Montgomery Ward because they've been out of business for a while, but it was a national company, and I was the first manager that didn't go through their management program. And in fact, I didn't graduate from college. I went 2.5 years, second semester junior, and I realized I didn't need a music degree to do what I wanted to do, and so I stopped. And they knew my talents. I just had an ability to take departments and turn them around, and they were all in need of help. So the president, Steve Peisner, put out an edict that if you had ideas, leave a message, and he would get back to you. And he did on three of my ideas and implemented two out of the three. So people that knew me said, you need to stop doing that for this company that's not doing well and do it for yourself. And I never thought about that. But a relative of mine knew a guy who happened to have this automotive franchise and it wasn't doing well. So, as I did with these other departments as a 23-year-old, I went to work for him. But I did it with the arrangement that if I liked it and did well, he would sell me that store. And we agreed on a price before I did anything so that I didn't end up turning it around against my benefit in the price. And I did turn it around. We grew 29, I'll always remember, 29.3%, 3 years in a row, exactly. And then that led to a second store, which led to a third store. So it was a backwards way of getting in, but again, a 23-year-old, what do you know? So that's what I did.
Sometimes when you don't know so much, and I think we'll talk about this later, it's almost like ignorance is a curse, but a blessing in disguise. Because I watched an interview with one of the founders of NVIDIA, and they was asked, "Hey, knowing what you know now, that you're one of the largest GDP contributors in the world, he's like, what would you do over again?" He goes, "I wouldn't." He goes, "It's a million times harder than I thought originally."
Exactly. Yeah.
So I want to ask you a few questions about that. Like we mentioned briefly offline, um, that you actually speak to, and whether it be coaching of um, people that wanted to get into entrepreneurship and some of the lessons learned along the way. Can you
Yeah.
share insight into that?
Sure. A friend of mine ran an entrepreneurship class for the University of St. Thomas's Opus business program, which is a nationally highly respected program in the Twin Cities. And so I would come in once a year and speak to her class. These are all people who are currently employed, most of them are, and looking at getting out of that because they think the world is so much better if you own your own business, and they just would jump in. But they were smart enough to take this class to learn what they don't know. And my role was to, be brutally honest about some of the certainly joys of being in a company, but really exposing them to what they were up against financially, resource wise, with their time, with the commitment for their families. And basically the message was, no, you're not going to walk in and now all of a sudden you can take vacations whenever you'd like, be gone as much as you like. You're going to all of a sudden make 3 times as much as what you did working for somebody else, and everything's going to be great. People are going to admire you. And it doesn't work that way in the beginning, and sometimes never. It's a very
Mm.
hard road, and you're always thinking about your company. You are never off mentally, even if you're somewhere else. In fact, that's more strenuous. It should be than if you're there, because you're not there, and you're not there to see what's going on, and that should have an impact on your psyche. So, the vacations are few and far between in the beginning. Typically, you make less than what you're being make at a job somewhere. Your investments are on the line. All your equity is on the line. Your home's on the line. And so, dealing with the personalities that you come across when you're employing people is tough because you need them, but it's not like a big company where you can just rotate them in and out. So you have to be a good mentor. You have to be patient. You have to be kind. You have to do all the things you don't want to do in a company because it's your company and your people, and you have to work with them. So you have to sometimes go through rehabilitate, not terminate, is the phrase I used to use, and be willing to sacrifice for years, 3, 4, 5, 6 years before you can start dreaming and living some of what you had thought you were going to achieve. That isn't the case in every case, but 95% of the time that's what happens. And thankfully, because of that, I was told that a lot of those people did not take the journey. They realized that's not for me. I don't want that pressure. I don't want that stress. And I'm just going to continue to work for somebody else, make good money. 5 o'clock, I punch out. I don't have to think about it. And a lot of people are wired that way, and that's fine.
And we need those people.
We do. Yeah, we're all important.
Society would not be society without people that wanted
Yeah.
that lifestyle.
It's
But
not better or worse. It's just different.
it's interesting though that you know it, it might almost sound like you were trying to persuade them not to, but you're more like saying, "Hey, this is appropriate due diligence before you make one of the most important decisions of your life." And because you've started several businesses, you have the background and experience to be able to speak to it, right, from your own experience.
Yeah, it's like American Idol, same type of process. Everybody thinks they can be a singer, and they sign up and go in, and they're good, but they can't handle the stress, they can't handle the pressure, they're not quite good enough. And why put them through all the pain of going through that cycle and have them waste years of their life when it's really not the best fit for them? And so that show weeds out those people. And same thing with this type of class. You can be a very smart, intelligent, hardworking individual, but it isn't for everybody. And so it helps weed those out that just don't have that extra self push and the resilience and the stick to itiveness that it takes to run a business. And you can have the best idea with a lot of money and be a smart person, but if you don't have those other qualities, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, you actually just answered one of the questions I was going to ask is what are the X factors of people that do make it, right? Because one of the statistics that I've seen time and time again, it might have actually gone up, is that 80 to 90% of startups fold within 5 years.
Yeah.
And as someone that started a business as a co-founder, made it to year 3, got to $10 million a year in revenue, and I just realized that that particular business model, not entrepreneurship, but that model that I was in, I was like, I need to make a change because, like you mentioned, um, the stress of the time for me personally, I was like, hey, maybe I could do a different path. And so, 3 years later, doing fractional CMO. So 6 years of being in business for myself. And boy, if I could have a time machine back to 2019, what the things I would say. What are some of the things that you would say to yourself if you could go back?
The biggest thing I've learned is to look for good people to help. As a young male, probably especially, used to achievement and getting accolades as a young person, I thought I could do everything and I didn't need anybody else. And yeah, you can maybe get there if you don't have a panic attack and kill yourself with anxiety. But why do that? I would say to myself, why spend that extra time and all those years, and time is money. If you can attach yourself to a mentor, if you can join a group of fellow business owners and listen to what they're going through and help them, learn from them. So I've learned over the years to look for help, take help, accept help. There are a lot of smart people out there that know things that I don't know, and we can help each other. If I had done that in my 20s, I would have saved a lot of time and money.
Going back to EOS, one of the key concepts now that we introduced the show, and I want to weave it back in. It sounds like what you experienced with that Opus opportunity and what you experienced your ownership, at some point down the line, you've realized that there's got to be a different way. There's a point where you realized, hey, how do I work on my business versus being stuck underneath my business, so to speak?
Yeah.
For a lot of people, EOS is that. What was it like with your introduction to EOS? What events led up to it?
So I obviously started early when EOS wasn't even a thought probably for Gino Wickman. And I wish, and I've reflected back many times, if I had added EOS, would that have turned out differently? I think it would have. Mm-hmm. It's the structure, it's the purpose-driven information that you're using to understand what are you trying to do? What are you trying to do, not just tomorrow and this week, and not just handling the fires that are in front of you and dealing with it day to day, but it's setting those objectives, those long-term goals, a year out, 3 years out, 10 years out. What do you want your life to look like? How does your business come into that picture? What part of your life does that take? Is it all of your life? Is it a part of your life? What do you want it to look like? So that you can work backwards from that 10-year time frame and build it out to be what that is. And if your mind doesn't understand where you're going, it'll just react to what's going on around you and you won't have the control. So it's important to picture. It doesn't mean it's going to be the same. You may change your mind in 5 years. That's okay. But as long as you have a long-term goal of what does my life, my family's life, the people around me, what does that look like? How am I going to do the best I can to control the outcome without controlling everything? You're not in control of everything, but you have the ability to shape your life. Not every single outcome, but the majority of how your life looks. We have the ability to plant that in our brain and have our brains go to work. And our brains will tell us, if we have those skills and that mindset, what do we need to do next? It'll keep us from going into some of the pitfalls, and it'll help us make good decisions. You probably woken up in the middle of the night and some idea comes to you. That doesn't happen just because it happens. It happens because your brain's been thinking about something and it comes up with an idea, usually when you're resting and when you're not boggled down with other things. So EOS is a way to put that together in a system that says, here's what we're going to plan on doing in the next 5 years, a 3-year plan for sure, a 1-year plan, and then 90-day goals called rocks, 90 days, 90 days, 90 days that fit into that 1 year and fit into that 3-year plan. And what is that going to look like? Well, it looks like what are the most important things that we have to do in that 90-day time frame. Back when I was on my own, I didn't think that way. I thought week to week. So to directly answer your question, I had a friend that was using EOS in his company, and I watched how he grew and how he was successful and how he loved his life. And he would tell me about this EOS thing. and it made sense to me, but I didn't really fully adopt it until I went to work for Wilson Wolf after I'd sold my companies. And John Wilson is one of the most intelligent people in the world, working on um, life-changing immunotherapy technology. And he's a world-respected person in that area, but he's not a people manager, and he would certainly tell you that. He's a workaholic and doesn't understand how to run a company, just how to start companies and great ideas. And I saw these intelligent
Hmm.
people were siloed in their areas of expertise that he had brought in from, Medtronic, from Seagate, from lots of highly respected Twin Cities companies, but they were not connected. There was no congruence in what we were trying to do. And I said, I
Oh,
think EOS would help us, John. So that's when he put me on the road of spending time with a really experienced implementer in the Twin Cities. And I spent 2 years working with him, learning everything there is about EOS. And I was Wilson Wolf's first EOS integrator. And we doubled every year for several years because of what
man.
it allowed us to do.
I love that story because you touch on something that so many entrepreneurs need to have an accurate reflection on. And it goes back to the accountability chart of EOS, where it's if you can't identify whether or not you're the visionary or the integrator type personality type,
Mm-hmm.
then you're just this Frankenstein of both, and you're going to be constrained by your own lack of self-reflection.
Yes.
But between you and that relationship, where he was just the classic visionary, right? The start the business, the grand ideas, the thousand things at once, the
Yep.
almost a mad scientist, if you will, type.
Right.
And
Yep.
then that person needs, Jekyll and Hyde. They need the person to have the guardrails around them to rally the troops and, make sure that the day to day is organized and structured so that they can continue to have their creative genius be what it is without it's like being out in the sun too long. Sun, beautiful sunny days, great thing. If you're the skin complexion of me, you either got to do it in doses or wear lots of sunscreen. You're going to get burned. You don't want the people around getting burned.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's a great analogy. That synergy between an EOS visionary and a good integrator, having that relationship, as you know, there's a book written about that, Rocket Fuel, because not all matches work the first time. Sometimes it takes two or three combinations to find that match. But, my job as a great integrator is to take the ideas and the concepts of the visionary and make them come to life. And if we can do that together, it's magic.
I want to ask you a couple questions about the integrator seat. Let's
Sure.
drill down and figure out what does a GWC look like for the seat? Like how do you determine, because like you said, different personality types require different relationship dynamics. I've can honestly say in past careers, luckily with my background in the US, I kind of use it as a filtering lens when I'm trying to read people.
Uh-huh.
And I've seen instances where I'm like, you are an awesome either fractional integrator or a COO, which acts as like the full time integrator type.
Yeah.
And I've seen ones where I'm like, oh my God, how did you get this position? Are there dead bodies that you know where they're buried? Like, what is going on? Why are you here and still here? Right. So in my mind, I've seen the worst of both, but I kind of want to hear from you to see what makes an integrator effective, not effective, good, not good.
Yeah. I've seen several personality types be equally effective integrators. So, an integrator for everybody, just in case they don't know, is the person working in the business with the visionary, kind of the second in command to make sure that everything happens running on time. I like to say the train's running on time, and that we meet our 90-day goals, which lead up to the year and the 3-year goals. And so you're working with teams, you're working with groups of people. You have to be a good communicator. You have to think quickly. You have to listen well. You have to hear what people are saying, understand when they may be up against some type of ceiling, whether it's self-induced or because of lack of resources or whatever it is, and help them identify and supply those tools to let them do what they do well. You don't micromanage. You lead and you listen and you communicate. And if you can do those things well and have a good relationship with the CEO, the visionary, to separate that person from the rest of the team, except in your L10 meetings, and allow them to do what they do best, which is build the business on the outside, come up with the great ideas. not get stuck in with problems. You know, the integrator is a good problem solver, hopefully a good problem eliminator, hopefully a good problem preventer. And through those skills, if you can do all those things and make your visionary flourish, that's when the company is successful.
What about worst case scenarios? What makes an integrator one that they're just not right person or right seat?
Yeah, ego is a big factor, I think. If you always have to be right, if you're always having to justify your positions or prove yourself, you know, I'm not a psychologist, but lack of self worth, lack of self confidence, fear of failure, fear of lots of different things. If those things, not that you can't have those things, everybody has something like that. But if you don't understand that about yourself and know yourself well enough that you can let that go and be a bigger person and let other people succeed, if you can't show other people gratification for things that they've done well and pat them on the back and give good feedback in one-on-one meetings, certainly with reviews. If you can't elevate other people, then you're probably not in the right position. People are going to look at you for leadership. They're going to look at you for directional change in a positive way, not in a negative way, but to feed them, not to starve them, but to feed them with energy, feed them with tools and information. And if you're not a person that likes doing that and gets satisfaction from doing that, you won't be satisfied with your job and you won't perform well, and it'll be evident to others.
I hate to oversimplify this, and I'm also not a psychologist, but it seems like effective integrators lead with love or feelings of self worth, and that spreads and permeates throughout the organization to others to elevate them up and see them develop and become, leaders in their own right, in their own seat. And it sounds like the ineffective rule by fear, whether it's their own fear of inadequacy or self doubt or insecurity, that then permeates and makes everyone else afraid to then speak up, which could be one of the quintessential things when we're looking at the Maslow hierarchy of needs. Insofar as Patrick Lencioni puts it in the five dysfunctions, like it all starts with trust. So if you don't trust yourself and you don't trust your team, then it really, it's like a faulty sprinkler system in a building. You're just pouring water when there's no fire.
Yeah.
It dampens the spirits of everyone around.
Yeah, that's true. Truth and love is a common thing that I tell myself. People deserve the truth, even if it's negative, even if it's something they're not going to want to hear. They deserve to hear that truth, and early on, not when, like you say, the building's on fire, but when there's a little smolder that's not even a flame. If you can guide them through that, it doesn't need to be a fire at all. They can either learn from that and benefit and move on, or maybe it's not a GWC seat for them. Maybe they don't get it. Maybe they don't even want it. Maybe they don't have the capacity to do it. And if that's the case, you're doing them a favor by releasing them from that pressure and helping them find something that's a better fit for themselves. So yes, I think that truth and love is what I try and use as a guiding principle.
One thing that we have a shared background with, which is martial arts. And I think that may have been one of the best non-business related type leadership training activities, because what it really taught me is a lot of my teammates and friends that we'd either punch each other in the face or try and wrestle each other or whatnot. You get done with someone that might be your opponent or nemesis at the time, and you just give them a handshake or a hug. And like some of my best friends to this date, like I thought for a short period of time tried to kill me. So what does healthy conflict look like, and how do you train for it, right? How do you develop that skill?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to that too. I think a lot of it depends on how you react to how you grew up. And without going to the long thing, my dad was not good at that at all. He was the opposite of what a good father would be and what a good leader would be and how to build self-esteem. He didn't have it himself. He didn't grow up. He never learned how to do it. He didn't know how to pass it on. So either you come from that and you see what that model looks like and you know how to replicate that, how to emulate that and pass it on. If you didn't come from that, you need to learn that. And there are a lot of ways you can learn that. Good mentorship, good groups, therapy, whatever you need to do to learn what does it look like for me to extend myself, to be a go-giver, to look at the needs of other people ahead of mine, because you will get what you want if you help enough other people get what they want. And that's the secret.
I love that book. same title, The Go-Giver.
Yeah.
It opened my eyes because I always thought that, you know, the difference between making money and earning money. And I think that like making money to me feels like you're entitled to it. Like
Mhm.
it's like money's not made, it exists. You earn it because someone voluntarily exchanges it for your services or goods.
Yeah.
And earning money is if you put enough goodwill out there and you solve enough people's problems, you almost don't need to worry about the money because like good things will come. And so I try to, again, with your fractional integration, I think a lot of what you do is build goodwill within organizations and with teams and structure, and like the organization needs to have a sense of morale and goodwill and vision.
Mhm.
And marketing, a lot of that is, yes, internal, right, but also external. And I try to tell people, I'm like, look, if you only look at spreadsheets for marketing and you say, oh, our conversion rates are this and this is how many appointments we have in leads, I'm like, that's important to track, but it's like having random musical notes. But if you don't see how it sounds and how the audience thinks about the company and service you're providing, you don't acquire net promoter score or brand sentiment, and you don't get case studies and interview your customers. Like, you got to build a brand, because when you treat people well and you show that you care, it it is evident. It becomes evident, and then it's sometimes the easiest lever to pull to actually increase those numbers. So, what are some recurring strategies or themes, or challenges rather, that you've helped solve or you've identified that make the biggest, most significant impact?
Well, you just mentioned some. Everybody is selling something. They might say, I'm not good at selling. I don't like selling." Everybody's selling all the time. You're selling yourself. You're selling ideas. You're selling your communication. You're talking to people. You're relaying ideas. That is selling. And so, whatever your business is making or selling or doing, it is some form of selling, which means you have to connect with the other side. What are they receiving? People don't like to be sold. I learned that early on. They want to be helped. They want to do business with somebody they trust, that they admire, that they consider a friend, that they're not afraid of. And so, if you come across not just because you're acting, but because you really are feeling that compassion for somebody else, you want to make their life better. You want to meet a need of theirs. Maybe you want to help them with something they don't even know they need, and your business can supply that. People will overlook a lot of imperfections, a lot of mistakes, um, a lot of things that happen in business that you don't have control of that impact your customers, if they know that you have their well-being in mind in the long run. And so the idea is to, even if it's a transactional business, you can still meet somebody where they're at. You can do it with an attitude. You can do it with your marketing, showing that you have compassion, that you care about people, and that you're not just out to get a dollar, but you're there to help them with their life's issues, with their problems. If you can do that, no matter what you're doing to earn your money, you should be successful.
Well put. Well put, Tim. I think one of the things that you mentioned, and it makes me think, my younger brother is the musician out of the two of us. I have one brother. He is he recorded and wrote his first album in eighth grade. And then I just wish he would have kept pursuing it, because as much as it drove me nuts to hear him practice and play and sing,
Yeah.
I missed that almost more than anything from growing up. And one of the things that was super interesting is now he's a mathematician. So when you're solving a problem, like you start with like, okay, this is the problem, and you have to then do the step by step equation. But you start with the end in mind, right? Solve for x, simplest form.
Yeah.
I want to make the analogy with music, because you would know better than I. But it seems like when you go on stage to play, going back to your American Idol, and you said that EOS helps you be proactive versus reactive, most people aren't freestyle rappers that perform on stage. Most people have studied and learned and memorized and practiced. But when you look at music and when you look at business planning, do you also take that start with the end in mind? Because I think one of the things you told me earlier is you would love to solve on how to be better able to predict life outcomes, business life outcomes further down the road. So that's where my head's at, because I feel like you have a unique perspective to that frame.
Yeah, starting in music, starting in fifth grade as a 10-year-old, you learn here's the piece of music, here's what it looks like. Maybe here's if you can get a recording of it, here's what it sounds like when it's done well. You need to make that happen. And so you have the end goal in your brain, and you need to spend as much time as it takes to get your physical body to make your part happen as a part of whatever band or orchestra or choir that you're in to make that end goal sound like you heard. And so your brain learns how to work your body to do what it needs to do to get to that. And that is connection of a lot of synapses in the brain, which is a great learning tool. That's why I believe arts in general, but music specifically, is really important for success in any area of life. And you mentioned your brother going into mathematics. That's not atypical at all. Music is like zeros and ones in code, and it all fits together. So if you're good in one, you're typically good in the other. How that helps in business is your brain already has learned how to look for what the end goal sounds like, looks like, feels like, and it's trained to look for opportunities to help you get there, or to look for the right people who have the right skills and present the right opportunities that fit into the boxes that you need to have filled to help you get there. So you get better at looking around, what can I use, what skills do I have to develop now in business to do the same thing that I achieved in music. And if you learn that early on, your brain will do that for you if you're open to what's around you, and you're looking and you're searching, and you're open to ideas, other people's thoughts. You will gravitate towards those things that it takes, because your brain's function at that point is get to the goal, make it happen. It'll work for you as long as that's what you're thinking about.
Man, I just had a crazy thought from the explanation. The analogy with music, the goal is to make it sound as good as possible based on the plan, right? Or the script. Same thing with EOS, right? You have your 10-year BHAG. So it's like, okay, we know that hitting this 10-year BHAG would feel great. It's part of the vision casting.
Mm-hmm.
But the analogy between music and math and logic is like it also needs to feel great. So it sounds great and feels great. Like, is it logical, and does it like have the emotional appeal? So you mix both of those, and that sounds like proper planning and probably proper music, right? Because if you don't play music, if people are in the stands and they're going, you know that you're not hitting an emotional resonance, right? But like when music is performed well, you get that emotional evocation. I never thought of EOS in terms of a music performance, but man, have you opened my eyes to that idea?
So let's go one step further, if I have another minute for this.
Please
Uh,
do.
the best musicians in the world are those that take something that's been produced already. There's not an infinite number of notes out there. There are a limited number of notes. And they take something that's been out there and they make it their own. You've heard that many times. He made it their own. She made it their own. And so it's that creativity that's the next step of music. It's not replicating only. You learn by replicating.
Mm-hmm.
But the elite part of being a musician is now, where do you go from there? You start to take your own skills, your own ideas, your own influences, and you adapt it. You adapt music to make it yours. In business, you can do the same thing. And the best business people do that. They take something and make a better mousetrap. They have an idea that was a spin-off of something that happened to them, or something they saw, or something they used. It's not replicating unless the market is so undersatisfied that you need to do the same thing that somebody else is doing to supply. The best and most successful, I think, entrepreneurs are those that take that skill of making something that's there and making it better or different to, again, supply a need or modify what currently exists to make it a better experience for somebody. That's what it's all about. And the EOS is a perfect tool to take that idea, apply the structure to it to make that a reality.
You know, you said about making the better mousetrap. I recently read a post on LinkedIn that the hook was, do you know what the largest pizza franchise is in the United States? And I'm thinking Papa John's, Little Caesars, Pizza Hut, the big brands. Uh, I don't remember the name. It slipped my mind. I wish I could capture it. But it's the one that has these ovens and convenience stores all across the country. And it's like 59 square foot. And this franchise just brings in the oven, supply, and sells the dough and the supplies. But because there's so many gas stations and convenience stores in the United States, and I'm just like, they're not making the best pizza. They've established the best delivery mechanism that makes it affordable to everyone on the road. And it really made me think of what you said too. It's like the best business people aren't necessarily, just copying faster or better. They're like like transforming the very essence to then solve, you know, figuring out a better way to solve a problem.
Yeah.
So
So if I'm not going down their path, stop me. But what you're selling is not your product. As an example, my automotive franchises weren't selling automotive repairs. We were selling transportation. We were solving getting somebody from point A to point B. People need to move somewhere. In the food business, you're not. I was selling a product called Oblaten. It tastes good, yeah, but that's not what you're selling. You're selling an experience. You're selling what that flavor does in your mouth and how it makes somebody feel about their day. If they're having a bad day, they can eat something sweet and savory, and it just changes their attitude. It changes their mindset. You're selling what the result of the product is. You're not selling the product itself. And if you can look at whatever it is you're doing and maximize that experience for them, it doesn't always have to be the best product. It has to result in the best feeling, the best whatever emotion you can get out of somebody, or take one of the senses and blow up that sense, taste of smell, taste, touch, whatever that is. If you can modify that better than somebody else, that's what people are going to buy, because it provides that, even though it may not be the best product.
would it be a fair statement to say that as a fractional integrator, you sell visionaries a future state of business where they don't have to worry about panic attacks and being the worst form of themselves?
Yeah, exactly. I tell that to visionaries. What you're buying from me is the outcome, the fruition of what you want people to experience in a more organized, more a faster, more a quicker, hopefully cheaper way to get there than if you try to do it by yourself.
Sounds beautiful. Makes me feel really good to hear these stories. I'm hoping everyone else listening also gets that sense that, like, if you have a left and a right brain, the best way is to combine the two spheres and don't just, be lopsided either way. Like, the best businesses, the best music, the best life experiences are ones where there's this holistic cohesion, and it doesn't have to be this, anguishing disjointment. Music is supposed to have a melody and a beat, not constant cacophony or cacophony. I screwed that word up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's true. And people don't know that the brain is something that can be molded, it can be trained, it can be adapted. You're not just stuck with the brain the way it is. It's very underutilized. And you can read all kinds of books, do all kinds of studies, but you can train your own brain to think in ways that you're not aware of, especially if you're a younger person and you haven't been taught that. I would encourage everybody to look at that. Your left side of the brain is for one side, the right side is one thing, the right side is for another thing. And as you just said, you can mold those two together. And if they're in combination rather than competition, you're going to get the best result out of all areas of your life. Just like being a right side fighter versus a left side fighter. If you can stand in the middle and fight equally from left to right and train your both sides of your body to be responsive, you're going to be an overall better balanced person and a better fighter. Same thing with the brain.
Absolutely. Well, Tim, I'm not going to be able to top that, and we're coming close on time. The only other question I have for you, not super deep, but important. Where can people connect with you, learn more about what you're doing, if they need fractional integration help or just want to follow along, your journey? How can people get in touch with you?
I'd be glad to talk to anybody about their journey, and if I can help in any way, I'm certainly able to do that. Obviously, if you want more information about EOS, I'm happy to do that. Either LinkedIn, you can find me on LinkedIn, Tim Kraft, Kraft. You can also email me at timjkraft@gmail.com. Those are the easiest ways to find me.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time, Tim. And thank you, everyone, for listening. I do not run ads on the show. The only request that I have of you listeners so far and ever is if you found value in this conversation, share it with a friend that you might also think would appreciate it. It would mean the world to me. Until next time, be well.